Sometimes, the most beautiful gardens don't come from what we buy, they grow from what we choose to see differently. A single tin can, a touch of paint, a little string, and suddenly, a forgotten object becomes something magical. Welcome to Backyard Fortune, a place where simple ideas turn into stories. In today's video, we'll explore enchanting DIY tin can chimes and whimsical planters that can bring charm to any garden. This video includes timestamps, so feel free to skip to the part that inspires you the most. If you have questions, drop them in the comments, I read every one of them. And if you love creating, use what you already have to make something special. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But behind this content, there's a real story and a real family. This isn't just a video. It's a piece of my heart. Every like, every comment, every subscribe, it truly matters. When you hit that button, you're not just helping a creator grow, you're helping a dream stay alive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. One suitcase garden bloom. There's a kind of quiet magic that happens when something meant to be forgotten is given a second chance to bloom. Imagine this, an old leather suitcase, once a silent companion of distant journeys, now cradling life in its weathered frame. The edges are softened by time, the locks rusted but proud, and inside, a small world thrives. Tomato vines climb upward, their bright red fruits shining like jewels against the soft green of basil and mint. The sunlight slips through grape leaves overhead, scattering a warm, dappled glow onto cobblestones and daisies below. What once carried memories now carries roots, leaves, and gentle promise. A little further, more suitcases rest on a simple wooden bench, lined up like storytellers with new tales to tell. Their interiors are no longer filled with fabric or paper maps, but with fragrant herbs and violet blooms that spill over their edges like ribbons. Bees hover lazily, drawn to the colors and the soft scent of thyme and strawberries. Ivy creeps across a stone wall behind them, as if to remind you that nature has no boundaries, only invitations. These old companions of the road have found their final destination, a quiet garden where everything is alive. And then there's the suitcase under the oak tree. Its lid is decorated with faded travel stickers, whispers from distant lands. A fig sapling reaches for the light while a blueberry bush rests beside it, surrounded by tiny daisies and thyme. At its feet, a wicker basket overflows with apples, hinting at a gentle harvest day. A cobblestone path winds nearby, shaded by an arch of grapevines, and for a moment the world slows down. You can almost hear the quiet rustle of leaves, the buzz of bees, and your own breath. What makes this idea beautiful is its simplicity. Anyone can do it. No fancy tools, no expensive materials. Just an old suitcase, some soil, and a little care. Drill a few small holes at the bottom for drainage, fill it with rich soil, and let your imagination guide what grows. Strawberries, herbs, flowers, even small fruiting plants, they all find a home in this humble vessel. Place it where the light falls softly. Let it weather the seasons, just as it once weathered time. Suitcase gardens are more than decoration. They are a gentle rebellion against waste, a way to weave the past into the present. A story written not with words, but with leaves and petals. And as they grow, they remind us of something quiet but powerful, that beauty doesn't have to be bought. Sometimes, it's already waiting, tucked away in the attic, just needing a bit of soil and a seed of imagination. Two bottle blossom borders. There's a quiet kind of beauty in how the simplest things can transform a space. Imagine walking down a winding garden path on a warm afternoon. The light spills softly across the landscape, catching the edges of green plastic bottles tucked carefully into the soil. They don't look like waste anymore. They gleam like emeralds, glowing under the sun as butterflies float lazily through lavender and daisies. The path curves gently, leading you deeper into a garden that feels less like a backyard and more like a page from a storybook. The charm of this idea isn't just in its appearance but in its heart. What once might have been thrown away now holds the shape of something graceful. These bottle borders are easy to build, clean, cut if needed, and press them into the soil firmly. Their rounded forms follow the soft line of the garden path, guiding the eye while giving plants a subtle frame. With just a few hours of work, the ordinary can turn into something truly enchanting. In another corner, a playful burst of color draws attention. Recycled bottle pieces painted in red, blue, yellow, and green form circular beds filled with tomato vines, marigolds, and tiny blueberry bushes. White pebbles trim the edges like a handmade lace, giving everything a crisp, bright finish. It's the kind of joyful detail that invites children to explore, adults to smile, and pollinators to linger a little longer. A garden like this doesn't just grow plants, it grows memories. And then, there's the clear line of towering plastic jugs standing along a gravel walkway, catching sunlight like crystal lanterns. Inside their boundary, strawberries and herbs thrive, their leaves brushing the air with a sweet, green scent. The transparent plastic creates a subtle shield against wind, helps retain warmth, and reflects the soft glow of early evening light. At the end of the path, woven baskets filled with cherries and apples whisper of quiet harvest days and slow living. This kind of DIY work isn't about perfection. It's about seeing beauty where others see trash, about giving discarded things a second breath. It's about shaping your space with your own hands and letting the earth respond. Start with just a few bottles, a corner of soil, and a gentle curve of imagination. Let the light do the rest. In time, these simple materials will settle into your garden the way old stories settle into memory, not loud or showy, but steady, familiar, and quietly magical. And every time you walk down that path, you'll remember that beauty often begins with what we choose to keep, not what we throw away. Three Winter Garden Wonders. Winter has a way of slowing everything down. The world softens beneath its blanket of snow, and even the smallest details seem to shine a little brighter against the quiet white. On a cold morning, a simple pathway becomes a glowing welcome. Rows of recycled mason jars and tin cans cradle flickering candles, their golden light dancing against frosted stone. Beside them, galvanized buckets overflow with holly and berries, the red vivid against the pale landscape. It's the kind of light that doesn't just illuminate, it warms. This gentle glow turns an ordinary garden into something magical, a place where every breath hangs in the air like a soft secret. A few steps away, a rusty old kettle sits in a corner, its traveling days long past. Now, it holds life again, pansies peeking through evergreen sprigs, defying the cold with bursts of color. Beside it, broken mirror shards have been arranged into a starburst, catching the winter light like shards of frozen starlight. Icicles drip from the fence, fairy lights glimmer softly, and everything seems to hum with quiet joy. It's proof that beauty doesn't need to be bought. It can be made with what's already here, waiting for new purpose. Under a wooden bench blanketed in snow, a small winter still life unfolds. Tiny fir trees rest in old tin buckets, their branches strung with soft fairy lights. Recycled enamel pots hold pine cones, rosemary, and dried oranges, each scent mingling with the crisp winter air. Birds perch lightly on jar lanterns, their feathers puffed against the cold, as if they too have gathered to enjoy the warmth of this small scene. There's no rush here, no loudness, only a kind of peaceful wonder. This kind of winter decorating isn't about extravagance. It's about presence. A jar that once held jam can become a lantern. A kettle that once boiled water can cradle flowers. Bits of mirror can shine brighter than any ornament. Anyone can build something like this with their own hands. All it takes is a willingness to look at familiar objects differently and to give them a second life beneath the snow. And when the candles burn softly against the cold, when the stars catch in the glass, when birds gather in the quiet, you'll see it. The garden is no longer sleeping. It's whispering. It's telling stories in the language of light. Four, rustic bamboo and timber fence. There's something timeless about a fence made by hand. When you stand at the edge of a garden framed by bamboo and old wood, the world slows down a little. The air feels softer. Morning light stretches across neat rows of vegetables, catching on uneven bamboo poles tied with rough jute rope. Some poles are slim, some thick, but together they create something beautifully imperfect. Birds perch on top, singing into the open air, as lettuce and carrots push through dark soil beneath. This isn't just a fence, it's a quiet promise of life, growth, and patience. A little further, the timber tells another story. Old planks, each with its own scars of time, lean together like old friends. Some still carry the memory of blue and white paint, faded but proud. Behind them, sunflowers turn their faces toward the sun, and gooseberries peek shyly through the gaps. A cobblestone path curves gently past an apple tree heavy with fruit. The wind shakes a few apples loose, letting them roll softly onto the stones. It feels like stepping into a garden that has lived through seasons and still hums with warmth. Closer to the herbs, the bamboo fence becomes neat and precise. Short, even poles lined up in quiet order, bound with jute like a soft frame around something precious. Mint, oregano, parsley, and lavender burst to life within, their scent rising into the cool air. Butterflies hover over the blooms, bees weave between them, and the dew clings to leaves like glass beads in the morning sun. The fence isn't loud, but it speaks, a soft, natural boundary that blends into the garden as if it has always been there. This kind of DIY garden fence doesn't require perfection or expensive materials. Bamboo poles can be cut by hand, tied together with natural rope, or mixed with reclaimed wood for a rustic, layered feel. It's not just about keeping a space enclosed, it's about creating an atmosphere. About giving the plants a quiet shelter, and the people who walk by a moment to breathe a little deeper. When the sun sets, the fence will cast long shadows across the garden. When it rains, it will darken and shine. When spring returns, it will hold the edges of new growth without needing to be perfect. And that is the quiet magic of working with your own hands, shaping something real, and letting the garden grow around it like a story that never ends. Five, kitchenware garden decor. There's a certain warmth that only gardens can hold, the kind that isn't loud, but lives quietly in the corners, carried in the way sunlight rests on wood and the way leaves brush against air. Along an old wooden fence, pastel chopping boards hang like story pages, each one carefully painted with the names of herbs that grow beneath them. Basil, mint, thyme, oregano. Forks and spoons, once clinking on dinner tables, have been bent into gentle holders for terracotta pots spilling over with fresh greens. Bees drift from one herb to the next, their tiny wings catching the sunlight. The grapevines above filter the light into a soft green shimmer, wrapping the scene in a kind of homemade magic. The entrance to the garden holds its own charm. A wooden archway stands, its frame decorated with painted silhouettes of flowers and herbs, lavender, chamomile, rosemary. From its beam, old ladles and spoons sway lightly in the breeze, chiming softly like an old kitchen remembering its songs. Beyond the gate, rows of lavender open like a welcoming pathway. Strawberries peek from their vines, a small invitation to linger just a little longer. This isn't just an entrance. It's a threshold. A gentle pause before stepping into a slower world. In another quiet corner, chopping boards stand upright against the soil, their surfaces painted with vegetables, carrots, peppers, peas. Old cutlery, polished only by time, sticks gently into the earth, marking parsley, tomatoes, and pumpkins. A slant of golden light touches everything, softening the edges and pulling warmth from every texture. It feels like a memory, even as it's happening. This kind of garden art isn't about perfection. It's about presence. The boards don't need to be new, their age gives them character. The spoons don't need to match, their differences tell a story. With just a little paint, a few hooks, and some imagination, ordinary kitchenware becomes a part of the garden's soul. Each piece carries with it a whisper of its old life and a promise of something new. And when the wind moves through the herbs, when the sun dips low and the chimes sing, the whole space feels like a living kitchen, rooted in the soil, scented with time, glowing with quiet joy. Six, Seashell and Pebble Pathway. The sound of a garden path can sometimes be louder than words. Not in volume, but in the way it speaks to your senses. Imagine stepping into a soft, winding walkway where white pebbles and seashells form patterns as if the ocean itself had gently arranged them. The lavender sways lightly on either side, releasing its calming scent into the air. Above, grapevines stretch across a simple trellis, their leaves catching morning sunlight. The shells shimmer faintly, echoing a whisper of coastal breeze. Here, every step feels like walking through a summer memory. Further along, the path changes. Blue pebbles ripple like a calm tide, spiraling around seashells pressed into the earth. Raspberry vines lean gently inward, and fig trees shade the edges. Children run barefoot across the textured shells, laughing without needing a reason. There's a softness to the sound of their feet, a rhythm that blends with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. Even for grown-ups, walking barefoot on such a path awakens something old and simple, like remembering the feeling of sand between your toes for the first time. And then, through a lush archway wrapped in grapevines, the path transforms once more. Fan-shaped shells and coral pieces guide you forward between lemon balm and nasturtiums spilling like green lace. A basket of strawberries rests at the entrance, glowing red against the greenery, an unspoken invitation to pause. The air is warm, golden with afternoon light, and every detail, the shells, the plants, the soft earth, feels intentionally placed yet wonderfully natural. This kind of pathway is more than decoration. It's a way of slowing down time. You don't need grand tools or expensive materials to build it. A collection of pebbles, some shells gathered over seasons, and a bit of patience can turn plain soil into something extraordinary. Each curve can tell a different story, whether it leads to a quiet bench, a thriving herb bed, or simply loops back home. As the day shifts and shadows stretch across the shells, the garden begins to hum with a gentle kind of magic. It's the kind you can feel in your bones, the kind that makes people linger just a little longer before stepping away. Because paths like these don't just take you somewhere, they make the journey itself feel like a small, beautiful destination. 7. Bucket harvest planters. The beauty of a garden isn't always found in grand designs. Sometimes, it lives quietly in the simplest corners, like the way sunlight brushes over a bucket of flowers. A weathered zinc pail stands on cobblestones, its edges softened by time. Inside, pink geraniums bloom alongside strawberry vines that trail down like gentle ribbons of green. Beside it, a vintage enamel basin cradles a tangle of mint and parsley, their leaves catching the golden light that filters through grape leaves above. Bees drift lazily between blossoms, and the air smells faintly of herbs and summer. It's a little corner, but it feels like a story all on its own. Just a few steps away, a courtyard transforms everyday objects into a thriving edible garden. Stacked wooden crates and galvanized tubs are filled with tomatoes, peppers, basil, lavender, and thyme. There's nothing polished about it. The metal is dented, the wood is worn, and that's what makes it beautiful. The imperfections give it soul. Sunlight warms the plants, the air hums with quiet life, and suddenly what might have been clutter becomes abundance. This is gardening at its most honest, practical, imperfect, and full of flavor. And then there's the wall. Stone, old, steady. Across its surface hang tin buckets, each one a small world of its own. Nasturtiums spill down in fiery orange and yellow, strawberries hang like jewels, and herbs push through the morning air, releasing their scent with the rising sun. Ivy curls around the edges, moss tucks itself into the cracks, and the buckets shine softly in the light. It feels as if the garden is breathing, as if every bucket is whispering a quiet reminder that even the smallest spaces can bloom. What makes this kind of planting so special is how accessible it is. Buckets and basins don't ask for perfection, they invite creativity. They are light, movable, and perfect for balconies, courtyards, or a sunny corner by the wall. With good drainage, a handful of soil, and a little care, they can hold anything from strawberries to herbs to flowers. And when arranged together, they tell a story of a garden built with heart, not just tools. As the day drifts on, the metal warms, the leaves drink in the light, and the air grows thick with the scent of life. A bucket may seem like a small thing, but in the right hands, it can hold a whole season of beauty. Eight. Mosaic memory path. There is a quiet kind of beauty in giving old things a second life. Along a cobblestone path in the countryside, broken porcelain plates and hand-painted tiles have been pieced together to create something that feels both timeless and new. The edges of the walkway are soft with lavender and thyme, their scent rising gently into the warm air. Butterflies linger on the blooms, fluttering lazily between the flowers and the shimmering mosaic. Sunlight bounces off the fragments, making the entire path feel alive, like a story whispered in colors and reflections. On a rustic brick wall, another story unfolds. Pieces of old bowls, plates, and mirrored glass have been arranged into flowing patterns of vines, stars, and birds. The sun catches on the edges of the broken porcelain, turning what once might have been discarded into something luminous and poetic. Beneath this mural, rows of vegetables grow steadily, their green leaves brushing against the base of the wall. It's a beautiful marriage of function and art, a garden that doesn't just feed the body but nourishes the imagination. In an orchard lined with apple trees, the idea takes a playful turn. Circular stepping stones made of mosaic pieces are laid out like a trail, each one unique. Teacup handles, vintage porcelain shards, and mirror fragments catch the light, turning an ordinary grassy path into a wonderland. Butterflies drift overhead, and the heavy branches above cradle ripening fruit. There's a sense of quiet celebration here, A reminder that even imperfect pieces can be arranged into something enchanting. Creating mosaic pathways or walls like these isn't about perfection. It's about storytelling. It's about taking what has history, chipped plates, cracked tiles, forgotten cups, and weaving them into the living fabric of your garden. Each step, each shimmer of sunlight on glass, becomes part of the atmosphere you build. And when the wind moves softly through the lavender, when the butterflies land, when the light shifts with the day, everything seems to belong. A broken plate doesn't have to mean an ending. In a garden like this, it becomes the beginning of a new kind of magic. Nine, hanging cookware planters. Sometimes, the most enchanting gardens begin with the simplest of ideas, like the quiet transformation of everyday cookware into something alive. Under a wooden pergola, old frying pans and saucepans sway gently, catching the golden light. Their once hard, metallic edges now cradle softness, strawberry vines hanging down like delicate garlands, mint leaves brushing the air, lavender blooms catching bees in their dance. Above, grape leaves filter sunlight into a dappled glow, and the entire walkway hums with warmth and life. What was once meant for cooking has become a living story, an unexpected harmony between nature and memory. Along a nearby wall, rows of old pans and buckets have been reborn as a vertical garden. Tiny apple saplings stretch upward, cherry tomatoes dangle like little lanterns, and violets bloom between glimmers of ivy. The metal shimmers in the late afternoon sun, as if whispering secrets from their past lives. Children reach up with small hands, brushing against ripe fruit, petals, and leaves. Their laughter fills the air like wind chimes, blending perfectly with the rustle of vines climbing steadily toward the light. It's not just a wall anymore, it's a living canvas of color, texture, and curiosity. And in the orchard, there's a quiet corner that feels like a secret. Copper pans dangle from a thick tree branch, their gentle clinking mingling with the breeze. Beneath them, reused containers overflow with thyme, spinach, and other herbs, each marked with simple handwritten labels. A wooden bench waits nearby, wrapped in the soft shadow of the tree, a folded blanket resting on its arm. The scene is still, like a page from an old garden journal, a space built not just for growing, but for breathing. The beauty of this kind of garden is that it doesn't demand perfection. An old pot becomes a cradle for strawberries. A forgotten pan turns into a home for mint. What matters isn't how polished the material is, but the story it carries forward. This kind of gardening is both deeply practical and quietly poetic. It makes space for creativity, for children's hands and buzzing bees, for the clink of metal and the scent of herbs on the breeze. When the sun dips lower and the copper glows warm against the fading light, it's easy to forget these planters were ever anything else. And perhaps that's the magic of it, transforming the ordinary into something quietly extraordinary. Ten. Tin can chimes and planters. Some gardens don't just bloom with flowers, they sing. Under a wooden pergola, a line of pastel tin cans hangs gently, each one decorated with hand-painted dots, flowers, and hearts. When the wind moves softly through the garden, the cans sway, their colors catching the golden light like floating lanterns. Bees hover near the climbing roses, butterflies flutter between hollyhocks and lavender, and for a moment, everything feels weightless. This isn't just decoration, it's a melody in color, a quiet celebration of the simple beauty made by hand. Elsewhere, a more playful rhythm takes shape. Brightly painted cans, yellow, red, blue, green, overflow with basil, mint, cherry tomatoes, and strawberries. They hang from wooden beams beneath grapevines heavy with fruit. It's a garden that doesn't shy away from joy. The colors don't compete with nature, they dance with it. The dangling plants create layers of life. Leaves above, fruit at eye level, herbs brushing your fingertips. It's practical, yes, but it's also storytelling. A way of turning recycled cans into a vertical garden bursting with flavor and personality. And then, in another corner, the same idea whispers instead of sings. A neat row of unpainted tin cans hangs along a shaded path, each punctured with tiny star and leaf shapes. When sunlight passes through, it casts dappled patterns on the stone below, as if someone scattered little beams of light across the ground. Old spoons dangle beneath, chiming softly when the breeze stirs. There's no loud color here, just the quiet beauty of silver and shadow, metal and wind. This is what makes tin can projects so magical. They are endlessly adaptable. With just a bit of imagination, a can become a lantern, a planter, a chime. They fit into gardens big and small, loud and soft, structured or wild. And when the sun sets and the wind moves, they don't just decorate, they tell stories. A garden like this doesn't need perfection. It thrives on texture, color, sound, and light, on the little handmade details that make the ordinary feel extraordinary. And just like that, something as ordinary as a tin can become a piece of a magical garden. I hope these ideas remind you that beauty doesn't always need to be bought. Sometimes, it's already in your hands. If you enjoyed this video, tap like to let the algorithm know it matters. Comment your favorite idea, or tell me how you'd make it your own. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join this growing garden family. One dream, one creation at a time. Thank you for watching. I can't wait to see what you'll create.